Hi guys, it's Alex Davidson here. I'm still the manager and partner of LP Group Canada, and today we're gonna talk about the newcomers. So the topic of this video today is the major expenses a newcomer would encounter the first days while coming in our country. A few important notes. First of all, of course, prices given are approximate, right? What we did, we calculated them based on the metropolitan area of Toronto, simply because, well, it could be either lower than in Toronto, or if you're, say, going to Vancouver, prices would be more or less on par, right? So the calculations would be roughly the same which you could encounter if you're coming to Canada, say in a few months or even in the next year. Second important point is that we tried to make those calculations based on our experience. Of course, your own expectations, your own ways of looking at the things could probably be different from what we're seeing. So again, this is very, very, very approximate things. And the third point, like calculations for the newcomer, when we're talking about the newcomer, we're talking about the person who comes here with the status of the permanent resident. So if you've received the immigrant visa using one of the immigration programs, say the federal program or one of the provincial programs, and you're coming in Canada and crossing the border in the status of the permanent resident, in that case, yep, these calculations could apply to you. If you're a student, if you're a temporary resident of Canada, probably numbers would slightly be different, and in your case, not necessarily you would have to purchase a car, etc., etc. So, speaking about the first expenses, now first and foremost, you're coming here, and the biggest expense you would be looking at probably would be accommodation. In terms of accommodation, it's, again, my personal understanding or my personal outlook, the stupidest thing the newcomer could do is rent a house. Never ever let yourself fall into that trap. I mean, look, I'm probably talking right now against the whole real estate industry, so blame me if you'd like to, but house is a money pit. Take it. Okay, I understand the first desire of coming to Canada. I totally understand the fact that you want to live in your own house, you want to look like major Canadian population, but don't, until you have that source of income which would cover all of the expenses, don't let yourself fall into that trap. So for the first months, or even for the first couple of years, I would strongly recommend staying away from houses, okay? Stay away from that money pit and focus on something which is more important right now, so establishing your social status in Canada. Now, as a newcomer, you would probably be left with a couple of options. Option number one would be an apartment or a condominium. Option number two would probably be a basement. So if you don't mind living in a basement in the first few months, or even in the first year of your stay in Canada, in that case, that would be the cheapest option. So in Toronto, you're probably looking at something close to $800 to $900 for a full basement where you can stay with your family. So that would probably be like one bedroom and a den basement. Pretty decent. The thing which lots and lots of newcomers don't know is that when you're renting for the whole year, and that's probably the rent you would be facing, you would have to rent it for not just on a monthly basis. You would have to pay for the first month, you would have to pay for the last month, and most likely, since you're the newcomer and the landlord not necessarily would be happy taking you simply because you don't have a stable source of income yet, in that case you might face a situation where you would have to offer to the potential landlord payment for one more month, say, to sweeten the deal, to make it happen. So in that case, I would say realistic expectation would be just to put it on the table roughly about $2,400 to $2,500. So you would pay for the first and say 2 last months of the year of the accommodation at the basement. Now, the next big expense which you would be facing would be purchasing a car. Questionable, of course, not necessarily you would have to do that, but look, let's face the reality. Unless you are settling in downtown Toronto or in downtown Vancouver, in major metropolitan areas of Canada, public transportation sucks. Just take it, okay? As a country, we were built on a huge premises. We were built on the fact that we got highways, that we travel a lot, that we drive for hours and hours. Therefore, if you want to reach a place, or if you want to go for the groceries, not necessarily that would be close to you. So I understand that for many of you, like daily commute, an hour or so would be all right, but still, purchasing a car, that's more or less investing in your own freedom, in freedom of transportation, and sometimes in freedom of getting a better bargain on a deal, buying something. So in that case, buying a car, say you're roughly looking at $4,000, which would allow you to buy, say, a minivan. Even if you got a small family, minivan for the first time would be absolutely a wonderful investment, simply because that goes for us to the next point, furniture. Lots of the apartments in Canada, they are rented out unfurnished. So what you would face, or what you would get in there, is basic appliances, of course, a stove, that would be the washing machine, that would probably be the drying machine, but that would be pretty much all, right? The rest of that, the furniture, you would have to buy it yourself. So if you got a minivan, in that case, you would save yourself a ton on transportation expenses. Now, what I did before this video, I stopped by a local store and just wrote down the cost of the furniture, right? Just for you, for your references. And I tried to compare it as much as I could to IKEA prices. Personally, I don't like IKEA because I believe their style is sort of weird, or it just doesn't look fancy to me. But if you'd like, you can always choose IKEA, and more or less prices would be the same. So in case of the furniture, very quickly, so the bed and a mattress, because the bed and a mattress, apparently they are sold separately, you're looking at roughly 600 Canadian dollars. Table with the 4 or 5 chairs, I mean the dining table would be, you would be looking for $600 extra. A couch, $600-700, right? That would pretty much reflect the prices at IKEA. The kids bed or a bunk bed would probably cost you about $200. Computer desk, 100, 200 maybe. Speaking about the computer, if you're not about to buy the new one, the brand new computer, you could pretty much get yourself a deal at Kijiji. For example, Kijiji.ca is a wonderful resource, and you can probably get a decent computer there for $100-200. Speaking further about expenses, you would also probably have to purchase yourself a medical insurance. Depending on the province where you are landed, so for example, in Alberta, it's not necessarily medical insurance there could start covering you from the day number 1. But if you're coming to Ontario, for example, Ontario Health Insurance Plan starts working from the 3rd month of your living in Canada. So for the first 3 months, especially if you're with a child or with a baby, it's recommended that you have your own insurance. Okay, so in case of the insurance, you're probably looking at something close to $1.5 to $3 per person, depending on the coverage, of course. That applies to the adult or to the child as well. Phone, internet, well, $30 for the cell phone per month. Internet, you're probably looking at $30-35 as well. What else? You would probably need to purchase utensils, of course, like cookware, $100, more than enough. Winter clothes, if you're coming from the southern country, if you did not have a chance to bring all that stuff, and by the way, it's not necessary, normal, not that expensive winter clothes, but of a pretty good quality would cost you roughly like $300-400 for the whole family, so which applies to the jackets, sweaters, etc. That would be the most necessarily, like, biggest, largest expenses which you would face from the day 1 to say the end of the 1st month. That's where you're more or less settled. That's where you got your first, say, survival job. And in the previous videos, we discussed how a couple working in McDonald's could actually save themselves money and purchase their first apartment. So if you didn't check it yet, get back to the video. It's still on our YouTube channel, and stay tuned with us on this point.